Today on CityCast DC. Which region has the best food scene in the USA? Eater has tried to answer that question in their new book, Eaterland, and our very own Tim Ebner has made his case for Mid-Atlantic cuisine, and he says that he'll fight anybody who tries to dunk on the Mid-Atlantic food scene. Today is Thursday, April 23rd. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Tim Ebner, one of my favorite guests, welcome back to the show, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you, Bridget. It's great to be here.
Okay, so I want to start with what might be a teensy bit of a controversial question. We're here to talk about the best Mid-Atlantic dishes. I have my understanding of what I define as Mid-Atlantic. How are you defining what states are or are not Mid-Atlantic?
This was funny. It was probably the most contentious part of this book project. So the book is called Eaterland. It features the 50 states plus Puerto Rico, all of the different cuisines that make up America. I focused it mainly on the Mid-Atlantic states. And yeah, Eater has sort of its own definition of the Mid-Atlantic that I don't necessarily agree with. So in their mind, it's DC, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Now, one would say, what the heck, Virginia? Come on now. But it actually tracks to a lot of Eater's coverage areas. And so by region, this is how they do their editorialized coverage. It's also, I think, how the James Beard technically rates and judges regions across the United States. So I'm not going to argue with Eater. I'm not going to argue with James Beard Foundation. They're much more prominent than me. But I would say, we're missing out on Virginia here. And we can talk a little bit about Virginia dishes today, too, if you'd like.
Yeah, I consider, this is very, very interesting and good context to know how Eater thinks about it. I am I consider Mid-Atlantic to be DMV, Delmarva, right? So I would put Virginia, Maryland, DC, and then Delaware, Maryland, that's my Pennsylvania in there is wild to me, or even New Jersey. I think tricky. Some New Jerseyans might take issue with that.
I'll only say, since I was born in New Jersey and I hail from the great state of New Jersey, I am a staunch Jersey defender, so come at me. It does have a lot of kind of mix of both South and North. Like South Jersey to me is very much the same as Delaware, is very much the same as Baltimore. There's that same dialect that they all speak with the enunciated O's and U's. So I think there is a little bit of blurred lines here. Generally, though, I think the Mid-Atlantic, this is the region where America was founded. This is the region where America got its start. Obviously, Philadelphia, then Washington, D.C. But there's so much food history here. And coming into this project, doing a story about, the history of America's foodways, I thought that I knew everything about, the cuisine of the Mid-Atlantic region, born and raised here. I realized quickly I knew very little about the history of these dishes. And so for me, this was really a fun travel, learning, tasting experience wrapped all together. And it definitely took a couple of years to do. We started this project in earnest in the pandemic. So all the way back in 2022, we were kicking off on the book and writing and doing all the project work. To flash forward to today, it's finally out on store shelves. It's being published April 28th. So it's just an exciting moment to see, and also to see the perseverance of these restaurants that we worked with who have survived some of the latest, moments of COVID-19 and the financial kind of chaos we're in now. They continue to truck on and they continue to do their thing. And so it's really fun to spotlight and show these recipes from so many great restaurants from the Mid-Atlantic region.
Yes. And to that end, you would say that the Mid-Atlantic has a strong regional identity when it comes to food and drink?
Oh, totally. And I will fight anyone who tries to say otherwise. I think the Mid-Atlantic to me is defined by a couple of things. First and foremost, I think we cannot overlook this region without talking about the Chesapeake Bay. It's the largest estuary in the United States. So many of our great oysters, our crab, our seafood, rockfish like that comes from the Bay region, but it's also a watershed system. And that watershed system extends all the way up into Pennsylvania. So, whether you like it or not, I think we are connected into Pennsylvania. And it also just has this incredible terroir of regions. So we have Dutch farm communities in Pennsylvania. We've got, the Maryland Highlands out in Western Maryland, which feels very much like parts of, Pittsburgh, West Virginia, even. And we also have the beach and coastal areas. So, I love the Delmarva Shore. To me, that's where a lot of my summers are spent. And there's just so many iconic dishes when you consider what this region can deliver. Locally here in DC, we have our own food community and our food identity. And I think that's completely different from another city, say like Baltimore or Philadelphia. So it's just amazing to have all of these great cities with their own unique food experiences, their own food identities. And to be able to put this into a book really is just like life goal. And like, I'm just so excited for folks to read it.
So what is Eaterland all about? And then what role did you specifically play in this cookbook collaboration with Eater?
Yeah, I think of this book as a food almanac to the United States. It really is like the definitive guide to a city or a state or a specific region of food. And so for me, I think being a part of this book with so many other talented writers, Eater editors, people who had the experience of being able to travel and find out all of these cool dishes and the stories behind those dishes, I'm really just one small component. But really, I think, in the chapter alone for the Mid-Atlantic, I believe we have over a dozen different recipes you can cook at home. Besides those recipes, we also have really cool history lessons and sidebar features. We have a whole 2-page spread on like what you should go eat when you're at a boardwalk at the beach in the Mid-Atlantic. We have a whole 2-page spread on what are the essential diner foods that define, everything from a Jersey diner to a Maryland diner. So there's really cool like food history mixed with culture, mixed with just these dishes that sometimes transcend a specific community, a specific person. They're really an amalgamation of things, and it unites us as people, it unites us as Americans, and it really unites and brings together so many people at the same time.
What are some of your favorite recipes from the book?
So I have a few different recipes that are some of my favorites. The first one being Smith Island cake. It is from Maryland, which is largely where I'm from. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, so I'm kind of a local in that sense. Smith Island cake to me is something that I've had at my birthday. It's something my wife and I had on our wedding day. It really is this like quintessential Maryland cake. And I believe it's the state cake of Maryland too. It comes from Smith Island, which is a tiny little water island community in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. And it's also this layered cake that has vanilla. It's typically a vanilla cake. I've seen chocolate versions of the cake, but typically vanilla. And there's almost 8 different layers of chocolate frosting that are in each layer of this cake. So it's not only like visually stunning and hard to make. So it's like a good baker's challenge if you're one of those bakers at home who really wants to test yourself. But it's also just like every single bite of that cake you get the perfect ratio combination of frosting to cake. And I just love that it's something that defines the Maryland culture. What I didn't realize is the story behind Smith Island cake. Like, why does this exist? Why did this remote fishing town in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay make this cake? So the history lesson behind it and the way that I learned about it was from a baker in Tillman Island, and her name is Amanda. She features the recipe from her baking shop, which is called Tillman Island Baking Company. She did the research and found out that this cake is actually something that was made back in the 1700s and the 1800s, when there were oystermen who would go out on the water for days to collect oysters in the Chesapeake Bay, their wives would actually make this cake out of necessity because it was a cake high in sugar and it could preserve the cake over many days. Even if you ate it, 2 days later, 3 days later, it would still have some freshness to it. So this was definitely not just like a delicious dessert. It was kind of this thing that people needed to eat for their sugar intake as they were doing all this hard manual labor out on the water. So that's really like the beauty behind all of the icing that goes into the cake, the story behind it. And I think what's so fascinating is there's so many quintessential American dishes we all eat. And when you start to peel back the layers and the history of it, a lot of those dishes were born out of necessity, whether it was colonial days, whether it was America's earliest years as a country. There's just so many interesting foodways to Americans and how we eat. And I think uncovering that was the greatest lesson of doing this cookbook.
Okay, the last weekend of April, the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian is hosting one of those events that remind you why we are so lucky to live in DC. The Living Earth Festival is happening at the museum Saturday and Sunday, April 25th and 26th. It is free. It's a celebration of Native art, creativity, and the power of clay, built around Always Becoming, this breathtaking outdoor sculpture installation by Nora Naranjo Morse. There's going to be live performances, artist demos, hands-on activities, and more. And definitely make time for the Mitsitam Cafe inside the museum. If you haven't already eaten there yet, you are missing out on one of the most underrated and unique spots in this entire city. And for my money, the best food you can get at one of the Smithsonian museums. Again, it's free on Saturday and Sunday, April 25th and 26th. Check out the full schedule of activities at americanindian.si.edu or the museum's social media at Smithsonian NMAI. Did you know DC gets fewer than 30 truly window weather days a year? Days that are sunny, not too hot, and not too cold. Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale is going on now, and it is the perfect time to make the most of every one of those precious days. You could save up to 50% off all the windows for your home. Window Nation's installation crews can finish the job in one day or less, so you can enjoy the breeze with minimal disruption. Best of all, they offer a lifetime warranty on all their windows, so you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. But hurry, the sale ends soon. Schedule a fast free consultation now at windownation.com.
It really goes back to what you were saying earlier about the Mid-Atlantic region really having a strong regional, history with our food, and why are eating this because of the proximity to the bay, a very specific story about this specific area.
Totally. And I think, the other favorite dish I have in this book, and obviously I now live in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, but Ben's Chili Bowl is obviously what we all think of, I think, as a definitive restaurant in the city. And their chili half smoke is probably the most recognized food item that either tourists or ourselves eat. What's so fascinating about the book project, too, is going to Ben's Chili Bowl and asking them for their chili recipe. Not as easy as you would think. Like, they are definitely a little lips are zipped on how the sauce literally gets made. So part of the challenge of this book was finding some restaurants within the city that are doing interpretations off of the original. So Ben's Chili Bowl, Virginia Ali, obviously this is the original. But if you go just down the street, go down U Street, head a right down Florida, you actually get to Meats and Food, which is another great place to try a chili half smoke. And Meats and Food, they recognize and they pay homage to Ben's Chili Bowl as the original, but they're also doing, their unique takes on how they make this chili with added smoked paprika, added flavor components that I think is just so unique because to me, when we talk about quintessential American dishes, they don't belong necessarily to one person, although Ben's may have been credited with doing the chili half smoke first. But I believe they get reinterpreted over time through history, through culture, through many people, and just the melting pot that is this country. To me, that's the beauty of this book, is that it brings together the collaborations and contributions of many into dishes that we all recognize as one.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, specifically Meats and Foods. I will ride for them. Their chili. I'm not even a big chili person, but I will ride for their chili half smoke. My co-host Mike Schaefer and I once did an episode where we did an interview from Ben's with the family that still runs it. So definitely check that out. The history, I will ride for Ben's as well. Ben's, to me, is not just about the food. It's also about the story, the legacy of what it means for that part of the city, and the family, the prominent family that's been running it for so long. So, we'll also ride for them all day long.
And that's how actually I opened this chapter of the book, was talking about Ben's Chili Bowl and its prominent history in American history. It defines to me what food can do, especially when we think of Martin Luther King and how he would bring people to the counter to have lunch at Ben's Chili Bowl during the Civil Rights Movement. I believe he ate there before the March on Washington. So to me, it's such an important way to connect in the history that we all know and have learned, but putting food in the context of that as well. And food is still activism. I also talk in the entry of the book how at the time when we were writing this book, we were up against Black Lives Matter and the movement that was just starting, and how Bakers Against Racism was one of the most prominent aspects of that time period and of that movement, of generating money for the cause, for the advocacy, and doing that through something like baking cookies. And so I talked with, Rob Rubba of Oyster, who's one of the founders of Bakers Against Racism. And we talked about how food here in the Mid-Atlantic is not just about place. It's not just about, the terroir or the place we live in. It's also about the social issues that we're up against. And so Ben's Chili Bowl to me is that iconic example of bringing activism together with food, and showing what the power of food can actually do.
Yeah, and to me, food is so inherently political. It always has been.
Oh, there's no doubt you can't escape that. And, I also think food can be just kind of trial and error, which is kind of one of the lessons I've learned from this project. My wife is actually from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I've become an adopted son of Pittsburgh. I go hard for Steel City, but not for their sports teams, obviously. But one of the things when I first got to Pittsburgh that I didn't realize as an outsider was that when you order food there at every bar or restaurant, there's something on the menu called a Pittsburgh salad. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, explain to me, like, what is a Pittsburgh salad and what does that make it different from like a regular salad? This is like a funny story where, confusion gets thrown into the mix of a dish that gets invented. So Pittsburgh salads are literally like a protein-based salad. I think of it almost like a Cobb salad with like chicken or steak on top. But on top of that chicken or steak with all your, veggies or whatnot, they pile on hot French fries and then melted cheese on top of all of that. So it completely destroys the health
boundaries of a salad.
Completely destroys the health benefits of salad altogether. And also, buttermilk ranch usually tops that. So to make it even fattier, it's just like it's a lot of dressing. It's a lot of French fries. It's a lot of melted cheese. It's a salad I now love. I make it at home. My wife and I will have Pittsburgh salad nights. But the funny story about this dish is that I believe a woman named Donna, and of course it's Donna with a D from Pittsburgh, tried to order a burger at an In-N-Out, like outside of Pittsburgh, without the bun. And somehow the quick order fast food chef decided that they would put together a salad and throw French fries on it. So this is something to me too, where like dishes can be born out of surprise. They can be born out of chance. And now if you go to any restaurant, like a bar, a pub, just any kind of like watering hole in Pittsburgh, you're going to see Pittsburgh salad on the menu. And it's just one of these things that I think locally, if you're from there, you get. And if you're not from Pittsburgh, you have no idea how this started.
I am not from Pittsburgh. We were in our pitch meeting earlier today, and we were talking about Pittsburgh salad, and my jaw was on the floor. This is not a dish I had ever heard of.
It's wild to me, too, because I think a lot of cities have these tinier dishes that fly under the radar. Obviously, like Philadelphia, we think iconically Philly cheesesteak. But in my book, in my chapter of the book, what I really tried to do was go one layer deeper than that and say, okay, obviously the cheesesteak is widely recognized and celebrated, but what are some of the other hoagies in Philadelphia that people eat day to day? And so to me, the roast pork hoagie is like the iconic kind of every man in Philadelphia, every woman in Philadelphia, every person in Philadelphia is going to be eating. It is really just broccoli rabe, sharp provolone cheese, and then some great roast pork on top. And it's one of these things you eat, and you can eat it next to a garbage guy. You can eat it next to a post office worker. It's like an every person dish. It gets you through the day. And the broccoli rabe really takes over the notch with some of the pepperiness of the dish itself. And Philadelphia, you always get some of the juice from the roast pork to top on top of that. So it soaks into the bread as well.
Speaking my language. Tim, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you because in the outline that you sent over, I was surprised. No orange crush.
Oh,
what gives?
Bridget, let me tell you, there is an Easter egg in this cookbook that you will find. So I will say the editors really, and the editors are incredibly talented. I cannot thank them enough. Missy Frederick, who is a personal friend of mine. She was the Eater DC editor for a long time. She's now the editorial director of Eater. Sarah Zorn, who's just like an impressively great cookbook author, also from New Jersey. So further complicating and making it harder for me to do this assignment was I had a Jersey person editing my work. But they both were trying to tell me that cocktails did not go in the recipe book. We were going to focus on food. I very much argued for it and pushed hard. And so we have a sidebar that has how to make an orange crush. And it's actually incredible. Yeah, it's from Reed Schilling in Washington, D.C. He is just a product of the Mid-Atlantic himself. He used to own Schilling Canning Company. Now he's in Union Market with his latest Chesapeake Bay seafood restaurant, which is so exciting. But the funny thing is this orange crush recipe, it is bougie. It is fancy. It uses a French liqueur instead of like some typical just like orange, kind of fresh orange juice. So there is fresh orange juice, but it has a little bit more of an orange accent and flavor. Against my chagrin, we went with like a more bougie version of this cocktail than the standard bear that you would maybe order in Ocean City, Maryland. But I love that I was able to sneak this recipe in. To me, a cocktail in Orange Crush is the definitive thing that makes a summer here. And so we had to include it as part of the book.
Hell yeah. I would have been a little disappointed. It's my favorite summer drink.
I think I would have quit the project before it even started if they didn't say yes. So,
Tim was ready to walk off the whole book.
Persistence pays off. I will say too, there's so many different dishes we recognize being from the Mid-Atlantic. Part of the fun was we didn't have to choose every single dish for a recipe, but we did work with, more than a dozen different restaurants to feature some of the quintessential things. But beyond that, we created a glossary of terms for readers. So quite literally, like at the back end of the chapter, there's just a list of terms that you should know as a Mid-Atlantic person. So it defines everything from like what scrapple is to, is it Taylor ham or is it pork roll? The big debate of New Jersey. Yeah, we also just get into the specifics of like what's so cool in the DC scene right now. To me, Doro Watts soul food, which is kind of that amalgamation of soul food combined with Ethiopian influence of Doro spice. We see that at a lot of different restaurants now around town. So there's a lot of cool new and emerging things. There's a lot of like just standard buried definitions for folks to know if they want to walk the walk, they want to talk the talk of being from the Mid-Atlantic. So this really is much more than a cookbook. It's hopefully a storytelling lesson. It's a history lesson, but it's also just, bringing up to speed on how to speak the speak and talk the talk.
And, you mentioned Rob Rubba of Oyster. Are there other kind of DC well-known names, chefs, restaurant folks that we might recognize in the book?
Yeah, we've got Alex McCoy, which he's an incredible, talented chef. He gave us mumbo sauce chicken nuggets recipe, which is really fun and easy to make at home. So definitely want to try that one out. Regionally, too, we went over to the Eastern Shore and worked with Ruse, which is a restaurant in St. Michael's, for a Maryland cream of crab soup. So the chef out there, his name is Michael. He's an incredibly talented person. He gave us his original recipe that he's using there. There's so many cool dishes in this book. And I think, we give credit to Philadelphia for the tomato pie, which is, I think, an iconic Philadelphia style pie pizza that you don't find anywhere else in this country. So a lot of cool dishes. I also don't want to ruin too many surprises because I feel like there's just a great plethora of options to cook through. And whether you're from the Pacific Northwest or the Midwest or the Deep South, we've got recipes that speak to your upbringing, that speak to the things that you would recognize as a child or as a kid growing up. And that's really the goal here. Is a lot of people think of American food as, hot dogs and burgers and all kinds of fried food. But yes, it is, obviously, but also there is a lot of smaller regional influences and cultural identities that I think play into the foods we eat day in and day out.
What else should folks know about this cookbook?
Well, I will tell you, first it comes out April 28th, so definitely buy the book if you can. If you advance purchase right now, I'm plugging, I'm sorry, Bridget.
No, do it.
Abrams Books.
Plug.
abramsbooks.com. We actually have a 40% off discount. So it's Eater Books 40 is the discount code. So you can automatically save if you order ahead. But I think to me, what's the coolest thing about this book is I came into this project thinking, oh, I know this will be easy. I know the recipes and the stories and the history of all these things. And I quickly realized I knew nothing. And I had to really talk to a lot of food historians. I had to talk to a lot of chefs. But as I was writing it, it gave me so much nostalgic joy because these are the dishes I grew up with, picking crabs on the back porch with my grandparents, eating crab cakes, eating peel and eat shrimp. Like that to me is every summer. Going to the boardwalk in the summer, going to the Jersey Shore, getting, soft serve ice cream or just like the homespun taffy. Like these are the things that like define me as my childhood. And so much of this was a joy to write. I think also what's so fascinating is that a lot of other writers contributed. A lot of other talented people were a part of this. The photo spreads are just amazing and the creative elements they've added in. So to see from, 2022 when we started all the way now to 4 years later, it's cool to see how this book has grown and developed over time through the collaboration of so many talented people. I'll say too, if y'all are interested and you want to come check it out locally and talk more about like regional food in America, we're going to be in Baltimore on May 2nd up at Charm City Books. And so we can talk more there. But also on May 14th, we'll be in Mount Pleasant at Bold Fork Books. So if you want to talk more about the book, you want to get specific around like dishes and cooking styles and techniques, this is definitely the place to do that. And I'm excited to meet some people and talk about it more.
I am so excited to be there. I'm excited to get this book. Last question. As a Jersey boy, you ever eat one of those fat sandwiches they got at Rutgers? You know what I'm talking about?
You know what? No. That's so bad, right? Only because my Jersey credentials are like, I was born there, and like at age 3, my parents got me the heck out of there. And I think, I still go back to the Jersey Shore every summer, but I honestly feel like I'm like a Jersey in name person only. That doesn't say I know how to navigate a jug handle. I know what disco fries are. I'm trying to build up my Jersey credentials here now. So I try to walk the walk, but yeah, tell me more. Like, what is this Rutgers sub?
So it's a sandwich. It's on a sub roll. It's like a regular sandwich, but the twist is, and this is going to sound disgusting, it has fried mozzarella sticks on the sandwich.
I've seen this. Okay, yes. I mean, Jersey is a place of many crazy ideas, and all of them seem to stick, which maybe speaks to the folks who are from there. But yeah, I think when I think Jersey, it's just, to me, the red sauce joints. We have a really cool chicken Savoy, which is this like brick chicken recipe where you kind of take out the bones of a chicken thigh, you put it in really flavorful hot chili oil, and you cook it under a cast iron skillet to get the sear real tight on the chicken. To me, that's like going to be a cool niche recipe for folks to try at home. Because I feel like outside of Trenton, New Jersey, you really don't know what brick chicken is, or chicken Savoy as it's called properly. So there's so many deep cut dishes in this book that I don't want to spoil too much of. But there's really great flavors. Obviously, marinara and red sauce. It's like the land of Tony Soprano and Bruce Springsteen, right? So it's just a state that has a lot to offer. And yeah, I will only claim my birthright there. I will not try to play like I am Tony Soprano himself.
Well, Tim Ebner, bringing the New Jersey bona fides.
Forget about it. Forget about it. There you go.
That was actually pretty good. Tim, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to get the book.
All right. Talk to you soon, Bridget.
Talk to you soon. That is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend that you want to have an orange crush with? You can rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And become a CityCast DC member. Join our new members Amy C., Jill K., and Les S. Thanks, y'all, for becoming members. You can support our growing newsroom and become a member at membership.citycast.fm. And we'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.